I was falsely accused of cheating by my wife, lost my kids overnight, and she told the judge, he's unfit and dangerous. I sat there speechless until my 7-year-old walked in and said, Mom told me to lie. Her attorney dropped his pen. You don't wake up one morning and realize your life is over. It happens slowly, quietly, with 1,000 little cracks you pretend not to see until the whole damn thing collapses under you. My name's Caleb. I'm 42, a carpenter by trade, born and raised in Texas. I've spent most of my adult life with my head down, working, paying bills, being what I thought was a good husband and father. I wasn't flashy. Never had a big dream about getting rich or famous. I just wanted to be the guy who showed up. The guy who could be counted on. For a while, I thought I was. Brielle and I got married young. Not stupid young, but young enough that we didn't know who we were yet. She was fiery, stubborn, gorgeous in a way that made you forget your own name. I was steady, maybe a little boring, but reliable. We built a life on that mix, or at least, I thought we did. We bought a small 3-bedroom house in Cedar Park when the market was still reasonable. I built the kids' bunk beds myself. I landscaped the backyard. I put in the damn tile floor by hand when Brielle got it into her head that the carpet was depressing. I said yes to a lot of things. It's what you do when you love someone or when you think you do. But love doesn't leave you guessing all the time. Love doesn't make you feel like you're failing every day, no matter how hard you try. The fight started out small, a raised voice here, a cold shoulder there. Then louder, longer, nastier. I worked longer hours to avoid it. She said I was neglectful. I brought home flowers. She said they were cheap. I stopped buying flowers. She said I didn't try. I told myself it was just a phase. It had to be. We had kids, for Christ's sake. Tessa was 7 and bright as a firecracker. Mason was 4 and wild as a tornado. I wasn't going to be another divorced dad seeing his kids every other weekend. But life doesn't always give a damn about what you're trying to protect. The morning it all started was a Saturday. Hot, humid, typical Austin weather. I was in the garage sanding down an old oak rocking chair for a neighbor, half listening to an old country playlist humming through my speakers. Sawdust clung to my arms, and for once, I felt halfway at peace. Then the door slammed open behind me. Brielle stood there, eyes burning, fists clenched around her phone like she was about to throw it at my head. Explain this, she snapped. I didn't even have time to ask what this was. She shoved the phone in my face. Text messages, dozens of them, filled the screen. Raunchy stuff, the kind you can't explain away with a handshake and an apology. My heart stopped. I didn't write those, I said immediately, instinctively. She laughed, a short, ugly sound. Don't insult my intelligence. I reached for the phone to get a better look, but she yanked it back like I was contaminated. You disgust me, she said, voice breaking. I opened my mouth, closed it. There was nothing I could say. She had already made up her mind. I don't remember much about the rest of that day. I know I packed a bag. I know I kissed Tessa and Mason goodbye, blinking back tears so they wouldn't see. I know Warren, an old buddy of mine from high school, answered his phone on the first ring and said, come over. No questions. By Monday morning, Brielle had filed for emergency custody, citing emotional instability and potential violence. I stared at the papers in disbelief. Violence. I had never even raised my voice around the kids. HLL, I barely raised it around her. My lawyer, Harvey, was a gruff, practical guy who wore the same 2 suits on rotation. He looked over the papers, grunted, and said, they're playing dirty. It's really dirty. But we've seen worse. It didn't make me feel better. The first hearing was a blur. Brielle sat across the courtroom, cool and composed, her lips pressed into a thin, righteous line. Her attorney, Sandra Walsh, was sharp and merciless, painting me as a ticking time BMB. I sat there in my only decent suit, sweating through the back of my shirt, barely able to breathe. The judge listened, nodded, and without much ceremony, awarded Brielle temporary full custody. I walked out of that courtroom feeling like a ghost of myself. It didn't feel real. It couldn't be. I called Brielle that night, begging to talk to the kids. She didn't answer. She never answered again. Weeks passed, then months. Warren's spare room became my whole world. I slept on a mattress on the floor next to a cracked window that didn't quite shut right. Some nights, the mosquitoes would eat me alive. I didn't care. It was better than feeling nothing. I worked when I could. Fixed fences, built shelves, replaced cabinets. Anything to keep my mind busy. Anything to not think about Tessa's laugh or Mason's sticky hands reaching for mine. Harvey filed motion after motion, but nothing stuck. Without proof that the messages were fake, the court wasn't going to risk giving me access to the kids. You need a miracle, Caleb, Harvey said, not unkindly. A real one. I stopped hoping. Hope hurts too much. Then, one evening, just as the sun was dying over the horizon, the landline rang. Warren yelled from the kitchen, Caleb, it's for you. I picked up, not expecting anything. Daddy, a small voice whispered. My knees almost gave out. Tessa, baby, is that you? I miss you, she said, and the tears started pouring down my face before I could stop them. I miss you too, sweetheart. I miss you so much. There was a pause. Then she said, very quietly, Mommy says I have to say bad things about you tomorrow. I closed my eyes, feeling something sharp and dark twist inside me. What bad things, honey? That you hit Mason. That you yell a lot. I swallowed hard. My voice shook when I said, Did Daddy ever do those things? No. You're nice. I sat there, heartbreaking, trying to hold it together. Okay, baby. Tomorrow, you just tell the truth, okay? No matter what anyone says. Just the truth. Okay, she whispered. The line clicked dead. I sat there for a long time after that, staring at the wall, listening to the old clock in the hallway tick the seconds away. Court the next morning was like walking into a nightmare. Brielle was radiant, like someone about to be crowned queen. Sandra was brisk, confident, organizing her papers with crisp efficiency. The judge asked if Tessa could testify privately to spare her the stress. Sandra agreed a little too fast. I sat there, my heart in my throat, as my little girl walked into that courtroom in a pink dress and shiny shoes, clutching a stuffed rabbit to her chest. The judge spoke kindly, asked her to tell the truth. Tessa looked at Brielle, then at Sandra, then at the judge, and then, in the clearest, strongest voice I have ever heard, she said, Mom told me to lie. The room froze. Sandra's pen slipped from her hand and clattered onto the table. Brielle's face was drained of color. The judge leaned forward. What do you mean, sweetheart? Tessa looked down at her rabbit, then back up. She told me to say Daddy hit us. But he didn't. There was a long, terrible silence. I stared at Brielle across the room. She couldn't meet my eyes. The judge ordered an immediate recess. An investigation was launched that afternoon. The days that followed were some of the longest of my life. Investigators started digging into everything. My phone records, Brielle's. They traced the number from the fake texts. It was registered to a burner phone bought with cash at a gas station off I-35. Surveillance footage showed Brielle and her friend Melanie walking out of the store, laughing, a little plastic bag swinging from Brielle's wrist. Melanie cracked first. She always was the weaker link. Under oath, she admitted Brielle had come up with the plan. Said Brielle was convinced I was going to leave her first, take the kids, ruin her. Said she thought if she struck first made me look like the villain, she could keep everything. The house, the kids, the narrative. When Harvey read me the deposition, I didn't say anything for a long time. I just sat there, staring at the beige walls of his office, feeling something cold settle into my bones. This wasn't about love, Harvey said quietly. It was about winning. I nodded because I didn't have words anymore. The court ordered a psychological evaluation for Brielle. Meanwhile, they reinstated my custody temporarily, pending full results. The first night Tessa and Mason came back to me, they wouldn't let go of my hands. Tessa kept sneaking glances at me like she thought I might vanish if she blinked. Mason, who'd always been a little hurricane of a boy, was quiet. Too quiet. He clung to my side while I made spaghetti in Warren's kitchen, his tiny hand fisted in my shirt. At bedtime, Tessa climbed into my lap and whispered, I'm sorry, Daddy. I pulled her close and said, You have nothing to be sorry for, baby girl. None of this is your fault. But the truth was, the damage had already been done. Even after the judge ruled in my favor, even after Brielle's visitation was suspended, it didn't feel like winning. There was no victory lap, no celebration, just a long, heavy silence where a marriage used to be. Warren tried to cheer me up. He dragged me out for beers at an old dive bar off Lamar, the kind of place where the neon signs flickered and the jukebox still ate quarters. You survived, man, he said, clinking his bottle against mine. That's got to count for something. I forced a smile. It felt like it didn't belong on my face. The house in Cedar Park wasn't an option anymore. Too many memories. Too much anger soaked into the walls. I sold it for less than it was worth and used the money to rent a little place near Walnut Creek Park. Small, plain, but it had a fenced backyard and room for bunk beds. I spent a weekend painting the kids' rooms. Tessa chose lavender. Mason wanted green, like a dinosaur daddy, so green it was. The first night in the new house, I sat on the floor of the living room after they went to sleep, surrounded by half-assembled furniture, and just breathed. It wasn't the life I thought I'd have, but it was mine. For the first time in a long time, it was mine. Of course, Brielle didn't go quietly. She showed up one afternoon while I was mowing the tiny patch of grass out front. Pulled up in a new SUV courtesy of her parents, probably, and leaned against the hood like she owned the world. I led the mower and wiped the sweat off my forehead. What do you want, Brielle? She smiled, but it was all teeth. Just wanted to see how the happy little family's doing. I didn't answer. She sauntered closer, heels clicking against the driveway. You think you won, Caleb. But this isn't over. I felt something stir in me then. Not fear, not anger, just a deep, solid wall of indifference. It's over, Brielle, I said. You just haven't realized it yet. Her eyes flickered. For a second, she looked almost human. Then she laughed and got back into her SUV, tires screeching as she pulled away. The weeks rolled on. Slowly, life started to stitch itself back together. I found a new rhythm. Mornings packing lunches. evenings helping with homework, late nights fixing up the house a little at a time, patching drywall, sanding floors, building a treehouse out back even though the yard barely had room for it. Some days were better than others. Some days, Tessa would flinch if I raised my voice even a little, even if I was just calling her in for dinner. Some days, Mason would burst into tears for no reason I could see. It hurt. God, it hurts. But we kept going. What else could we do? I learned to sit with them until they fell asleep, whispering that they were safe, that they were loved, that no one was going to take them away again. I started therapy, mostly because the court recommended it, but ended up needing it more than I thought I would. My therapist, Dr. Leland, was an older guy with kind eyes and a rumbling voice. He didn't push, didn't prod, just listened. One session, I finally said it out loud. I don't know if I'll ever trust anybody again. He nodded, like he'd heard it 1,000 times before. That's okay, he said. Trust isn't something you owe. It's something you build, brick by brick. I hated how much sense that made. Sometimes late at night, after the kids were asleep and the house was quiet except for the hum of the old fridge, I'd sit on the back porch and wonder when exactly it had all gone wrong. Had I missed the signs? Had I been so busy being steady that I didn't notice when the ground shifted under me? The truth is, it's never one big thing. It's 1,000 little ones. It's the first time you don't say what's on your mind because you're too tired to fight. It's the second time you let yourself believe that love should feel like walking on eggshells. It's the third time you convince yourself that being miserable is just part of being married. And then one day, you wake up alone, staring at the ruins of everything you thought you knew. There were still court dates to attend. Brielle kept filing motions, appeals, complaints, requests for custody review. Every few weeks, another envelope would land in my mailbox, thick and heavy and full of her venom. Harvey handled most of it, but it didn't make it easier. Every letter felt like a punch in the gut. The judge, to his credit, saw through it. He wasn't in the mood for games after what Tessa had revealed in court. Still, it wore me down. I'd sit at the kitchen table at night, papers spread out in front of me, Mason coloring dinosaurs at one end, Tessa doing math homework at the other, and I'd feel like I was barely keeping my head above water. Sometimes I caught Tessa watching me with this worried look, like she thought I might break in half if she blinked wrong. I made myself smile for her. Always smile. Kids know more than you think. They feel it in their bones when something's wrong, no matter how hard you try to hide it. One night, after another court summons arrived, I must have looked worse than usual. I sat with my head in my hands, feeling the kind of bone-deep exhaustion you can't sleep off. Tessa climbed into my lap and wrapped her arms around my neck. "It's okay, Daddy," she whispered. "We're still a family." I held her tight, eyes burning. If there was anything good left in this broken world, it was right there in my arms. Around that time, Brielle's parents tried to get involved. I came home from work one evening to find her mother, Cynthia, standing on my porch, purse slung over her shoulder, face pinched tight. I sighed and leaned against the truck, too tired for whatever speech she'd rehearsed in her head. "We want to see our grandchildren," she said, arms crossed. "You know where the court is?" I said evenly. "They shouldn't be punished because you two couldn't make it work." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Is that what you think happened? We just couldn't make it work?" Cynthia's mouth twisted like she'd tasted something sour. "I don't care what Brielle did," she snapped. "They're still our blood." I thought about it for a second. Thought about all the holidays I spent sitting at their table, being picked apart piece by piece. About all the times they treated me like some hired help who wasn't quite good enough for their daughter. "You never liked me much," I said finally. She didn't deny it. "But those kids love you," I said. "So if you want to see them, you're going to have to do it the right way. No more backdoor games. No more lies. You go through the court, you get visitation approved, you play by the rules." She stared at me for a long moment, jaw tight. Then she turned on her heel and walked away without another word. By winter, things started settling into something that almost resembled normal life. I picked up steadier work with a local contracting company. The pay wasn't great, but the hours were flexible, and my boss, an old guy named Victor, didn't mind when I had to leave early for school pickups or pediatrician appointments. "You're doing good, kid," Victor said one afternoon, handing me a cold Coke after we finished a deck install. A lot of men would have cracked by now. I shrugged, embarrassed. Didn't feel like I had a choice. Victor grinned, deep lines creasing his sun-battered face. "Nobody ever does. You just keep putting one foot in front of the other till you look up and realize you're somewhere better." I thought about that a lot driving home that day, the windows down, the kids chattering in the back seat about their day at school. Maybe Victor was right. Maybe survival wasn't about heroics. Maybe it was just about showing up, over and over, no matter how tired you were. Still, not everything healed. Some scars stick around. Tessa started having nightmares, the kind that left her screaming and clawing at the sheets. It got so bad I started sleeping on the floor next to her bed some nights, just so she'd know she wasn't alone. Mason developed a stutter. The pediatrician said it was probably trauma-related. I sat in the parking lot after that appointment, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white, fighting the urge to scream. This wasn't what I wanted for them. This wasn't the life I promised them when they were born. But it was the life they had now. And all I could do was make it as safe, as steady, and as full of love as I could. Warren stayed a fixture in our lives. Uncle Warren, the kids called him. Some nights he'd swing by with a pizza and a six-pack, help me fix up the crumbling fence out back, listen without saying much while I talked myself in circles about custody battles and lawyer fees, and whether I was screwing it all up. "You're doing fine," he'd say eventually. "You're here. That's what matters." Sometimes I believed him. Sometimes I didn't. But I kept showing up anyway. Brielle, for her part, faded from the picture more and more. The court had ordered supervised visits, but she missed most of them, offering weak excuses through her lawyer, car trouble, work emergency, flu. After a while, even the court-appointed supervisor stopped bothering to schedule them. Tessa stopped asking when she'd see her mother. Mason stopped mentioning her altogether. I didn't know how to feel about that. Relief, guilt, sadness, maybe all three at once. I didn't badmouth Brielle in front of them. I never would. But the silence she left behind was loud enough without me adding to it. One evening, just before Christmas, Tessa sat next to me on the worn couch, decorating a shoebox for her school's holiday drive. She looked up suddenly, glitter glue smeared on her fingers. "Daddy," she said, "are we going to be okay?" I blinked hard, the question hitting deeper than anything she could have said. I reached out, brushed a lock of hair behind her ear. "We already are, baby," I said. "We already are." She smiled small, but real, and went back to her project, humming under her breath. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I believed it. The new year rolled in quietly. No big parties, no fireworks. Just me and the kids on the couch, wrapped in old blankets, watching a movie none of us had the energy to finish. Somewhere around midnight, Tessa fell asleep against my side, Mason already snoring softly on the floor. I sat there a long time, listening to their breathing, feeling the deep, aching peace of simply being okay. But not everything was done yet. Not really. Because Brielle wasn't done trying to stir the pot. In March, her lawyer filed a motion for another custody review. Changed circumstances, it said. Mother is stable and requests reinstatement of visitation. Harvey called me into his office, holding the papers like they were a dead rat. "She's got a new angle," he said, probably trying to paint herself as reformed. I stared at the papers. I was tired. So damn tired. But I wasn't about to let her come back into my kids' lives and yank the rug out from under them again. Harvey leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "We could fight it the old-fashioned way," he said. "Or, we could make sure the truth gets laid out nice and neat." I raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" He smiled, slow and sharp. "She's still under investigation for fraud," he said. "Fabricating evidence. You remember those fake texts she made?" I nodded. "Well, it's criminal," he said. "Felony level. We've been sitting on it because you didn't want to press charges before. But if she wants to drag this back into court," he let the sentence hang there. I sat back in my chair, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "No mercy," I said quietly. Harvey's grin widened. Court that day was different from the others. I walked steadily, calm. I wasn't fighting for scraps anymore. I wasn't begging for my life. I was defending what was already mine. Brielle sat across the aisle, dressed in a sharp navy suit, makeup immaculate, trying to look like the perfect mother. But there was a tension in her, a brittleness she couldn't hide. Sandra, her lawyer, looked uneasy. The judge reviewed the paperwork, flipping through it slowly. Then Harvey stood up, cool as you please, and said, "Your Honor, before we proceed, we'd like to submit new evidence pertinent to the mother's request for reinstatement." He handed over a thick folder. The judge opened it. Inside were the full investigation results. The fake texts. The burner phone receipt. Melanie's signed confession. Everything. The judge's face darkened as he read. He looked up at Brielle, eyes hard as stone. "Ms. Calloway," he said, voice like gravel. "Would you like to explain why you are requesting visitation while under active criminal investigation for fabricating evidence and attempting to manipulate this court?" Brielle's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Sandra shifted uncomfortably in her seat, clearly wishing she was anywhere else. The judge slammed the folder shut. "Request for reinstatement is denied. Furthermore, in light of this new information, I am referring this case to the district attorney's office for review. Criminal charges may be forthcoming." Brielle's face went bloodless. Tessa and Mason weren't there, thank God, but I wish they could have seen it. Not because I wanted them to see her punished. Because I wanted them to see that the truth mattered. That lie didn't win. That justice wasn't just some word adults threw around to make themselves feel better. Outside the courtroom, Brielle tried to catch up with me. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "You think you're better than me now?" she hissed. I shook her off, slowly, deliberately. "No," I said. "I always was. You just never saw it." She stood there, stunned, as I walked away, the doors swinging shut behind me. Life after that didn't suddenly turn into some perfect fairy tale. The charges against Brielle went forward. She got probation and had to attend mandatory counseling and parenting classes. No more custody motions. No more surprise visits. The court made it clear she wasn't to contact me or the kids unless supervised and approved in advance. She faded from our lives like a bad dream finally releasing its hold. By summer, the kids and I had built something new. Not perfect, not shiny, but real. Tessa made friends in the neighborhood. Mason's stutter slowly faded with therapy and time. We had lazy weekends at the park, cheap movie nights, pancake breakfasts on Sundays where we burned half the batch and laughed about it. Warren met a woman named Jean, sweet and tough as nails, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like all of us were moving forward, not just surviving, but living. One evening, as the sun set behind the scrubby trees in the backyard, I sat in the worn Adirondack chair I'd built with my own hands, a cold beer sweating in my palm. Tessa and Mason were chasing fireflies, their laughter ringing through the warm air. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and smiled. I wasn't the same man who walked into that courtroom a year ago, broken and desperate. I was someone new, someone stronger. And in the end, that was the real revenge. Not shouting, not cruelty, just living better than they ever expected you could.